Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our mental health seminar series. I'm here with Zina Cartwell, the Prevention Director of Central Alabama Wellness. Zina, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. I love being here.
Well, I think this is an incredible time just to begin just talking about the topic of mental health. I know at Central Alabama Wellness, that's one of the things that you all focus on so much, in just helping people understand what's happening with our mental health, the challenges that we face with our mental health. You guys also help with those struggling with maybe substance abuse issues. Tell us a little bit about just yourself and what you do, and maybe your connection with Central Alabama Wellness, what you guys do there.
Well, again, thank you, Brandon, for allowing me to come and speak about mental health and mental wellness. It's important for us all to understand that we definitely want to break the stigma of mental health and mental illness, because a lot of people think, well, if I get the help that I need, or even maybe thinking their situation is not extreme enough to get help, that they don't need any type of help. And so with being able to say, well, what is mental health? Not just mental illness, because there's a difference. Okay. When you have mental illness, you actually have a diagnosis. When we're talking about mental health, we're talking about being mentally well and living a life that's well. Anything can affect our mental health, such as stress, such as the things that trauma, the things that we go through, relationships, situations, environment, our economy, gas prices going up, it can affect our mental health. And so we all should work on being in a good place mentally, and we're not all dealing with mental illness. So mental health awareness is getting to a place where you are looking at, how am I handling the stresses of life? How am I dealing with the things that I've experienced? How am I becoming the best person that I could possibly be, mentally, physically, emotionally? And then those things, taking a holistic approach to our mental health. Everything feeds into our mental health. Sure. How we live our life, how we, the relationships that we're in, our spiritual relationships, everything feeds into our mental health. And everything with mental health is all about our thoughts. What are the things that's going on in our minds? What are the things that, whether they're negative or positive, and then being able to take control of those things. Sure. And find a good place where you find balance and exercise and living right. And all of those things affect our mental health.
One thing you said that I think is really important, that I hope everyone caught, and you said that there is a difference between our mental health and our mental illness. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding that component actually makes this topic relevant to everybody. I think,
yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Zina, but do you see sort of a stigma that sometimes comes with this topic of our mental health, that we think, well, that's someone else, or I don't have that, I don't deal with that. But I think that statement you made really makes it relevant to every one of us, that it's not just about a mental illness that you have a diagnosis of, but we all have to take care of our mental health. Is that correct?
Yeah, and also making sure that we don't self-diagnose ourselves. Just because you have a bad day doesn't mean that you are in a deep depression or you're clinically depressed. Just because things are not going your way, or maybe you're feeling a little moody, doesn't mean that you're bipolar. So we got to make sure that we are not diagnosing ourselves. And sometimes we can go online and, I got all of these symptoms and I'm bipolar today.
The last thing you want to do is just blanket Google something.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
We Google everything. And Google has the answer to everything. And that doesn't mean that you are you dealing with stress? Yes. Are you dealing with some issues with your moods? But you want to make sure, and that's where we step in.
Sure.
With Central Alabama Wellness, we're a nonprofit organization. But we deal with mental illness. We also deal with substance abuse and prevention, and making sure that you're diagnosed properly if you're not feeling well, if you know where your mental status at.
Sure.
I've had clients like, just something is not quite right.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get a diagnosis, but why
Right.
not contact us? Why not
Sure.
make sure that it's not something that needs, it could be therapy that you need and not necessarily medication, or
Sure.
just making sure that you are being proactive in
That's
your
good.
mental health.
So
And
being
again,
proactive is
yeah,
much better than being reactive.
exactly,
So
exactly.
Zina, when you're talking about that, I do think that's important, that the proactive component of just our well-being, the
Yeah,
wholeness of who we are. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is that mental illness or mental health even is just taking care of yourself in the
yeah,
same way you would in your diet or resting in that aspect. So are people really, like, are we really seeing, because this is sort of a rising topic. We're hearing more about our mental health and our mental well-being today
yeah.
than ever before. Is this something that you see sort of widespread, that really is an underlying current of an issue with most of us, that we're struggling in our mental health?
Yeah, and I think what we're having those topics. I think we're understanding more the importance of mental health, but I think we're not putting in the work to be mentally healthy.
Right.
So we can talk all day long, but if we don't make those steps to say, recognizing, it's just like with anyone, we cannot change a behavior unless we recognize that there's a behavior that needs to be changed.
That's good.
And so, even though we're having these conversations about mental health, how much work are you putting into creating an environment around you,
Mhm.
within you, to make sure you are healthy?
Sure.
And so these topics are coming up, and I believe that we are all dealing with mental health issues.
So, Zena, if that's the case, if we're seeing more discussion about the topic of our mental health, we're becoming more aware of the need
Mhm.
to take care of ourselves in that capacity. Why do you think it is that this is becoming so known now? Why is it now that we're uncovering this, and this is becoming such a need and such a point of attention from organizations just like Central Alabama Wellness, and obviously the attention that you put? Why do you believe that that is?
Well, if we say with Central Alabama Wellness, we've been attacking these issues for 50 years. So
Mhm.
it's not necessarily, 50 years sounds very young, but it's not necessarily something that we just now start talking about it.
Sure.
I think when we made the transition, because we was before 2020, our organization was called Chilton Shelby Mental Health Center. When we made that transition, it was also in a time where people was trying to get rid of the stigma of mental health. And
Right.
so that helped us to say, okay, we want to live life well, and we want to be well in the things that we do. And I think we're bringing those things to the upfront because people are seeing that we can no longer cover this. We can no
Sure.
longer ignore the pressures of life, and that just if you ignore it, it just goes away,
Yeah.
because it's not. And so if we're able to give that information to not only ourselves, but our next
Mhm.
generation, then maybe hopefully it doesn't turn into something where it is a mental illness.
Sure.
But if we talk about how do we deal with stress, how do we deal with how we feel about ourselves, or how did that environment, how did the trauma, affect us? And
Right.
I think we're getting to a place where we're having those conversations. Hey, I've gone through trauma, and you don't
Yeah.
feel like you're by yourself. When you recognize that other people have gone through some of the things that you've gone through, it creates a somewhat of a support system. Say, I'm not by myself. I'm not, and that's what, when we deal with mental health issues, it makes you feel isolated, make you feel
Yeah.
like you're the only person that's feeling that way. So
Yes.
when now that it's up and we're talking about it, people are feeling like, wow, I'm not the only one feel stressed. And
That's good.
especially after 2020, where we were all put on basically the same playing field,
Yeah.
dealing with the same exact issues, not being able to go out, not being able to be around our family members. Now think about how people were already dealing with mental health issues, and then being isolated.
Yeah.
Being isolated from support system. Children, because sometimes the support system for children is school and their friends and their peers, and they no longer have that. So being able to bring this to the front where, hey, we're affected by it.
Yeah.
And we're still affected by it. Just because, we're able to not wear our mask anymore, it doesn't mean that we wasn't affected by it mentally.
That's right. And it's kind of the lingering effects of 2020. 2020 gets a lot of blame for a lot of things, but really 2020 did not create the problem. 2020 really revealed the problem.
Yeah.
It's what you said. This is not a new issue. It's removing that stigma so that they're not alone. And I think one of the most important things that as you watch tonight and you hear this conversation that you could understand is that you're not alone in your struggle, whatever that may be. There's a lot of people who are struggling with their mental health as well.
Yeah.
Zina, speaking to somebody who may be watching tonight and go, you know what, I feel like I'm struggling. I realize we can't solve the problem in a short conversation, but what are some just first steps, maybe just a few baby steps that people could begin to take just to improve their current mental health status? Like what could we begin to do?
I think the very first thing we have to recognize that what you feel is valid. How you feel is valid. And just because other people are not feeling the exact same way that you're feeling doesn't mean that what you're feeling is necessarily wrong or right. But recognizing that, hey, I am feeling a certain kind of way. And then after we recognize those things, we have to pinpoint it. What am I feeling? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling upset? Whatever feeling that you have to identify that feeling, because you got to know what emotion you need to address.
That's good.
And when we start addressing those emotions, then we start looking at, well, what are the things that feeds into it? Okay. So it really is just a lot of self-reflection of where am I at, and being honest with yourself, completely honest. And I think a lot of times people who are caregivers, who are always taking care of other people, deal with the worst mental health. They are, because they're so busy helping and worrying about everybody else that they never take time out for themselves.
That's good.
And so we think
busy moms, busy dads,
pastors,
caretakers, that's a big deal.
Counselors,
Zina.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, that's great. I think that would be a monumental step for most people, just to take a break, breathe in, and take a little bit of a self-assessment. Ask, where am I in my mental health? To just breathe a moment and to just be aware of where you are. Zina, I love the amount of care and kindness and attention you put into what you do. It's very evident that you love people. It doesn't take long to be around you for a minute and know that your heart really is to make the lives of other people better. And I would encourage anybody, if you're just struggling or you want to have that conversation, you feel like you need to take a step toward wellness in your mental health, I would contact Central Alabama Wellness. I would reach out to Zina. All the information is right there on your screen. You could reach out, maybe make a contact there. But even beyond that, Zina, you're just involved. Not only you're a great asset to For Tomorrow and Central Alabama Wellness, but you also have taken some steps even in your own organization through, I heard your Cry for Help. Tell us just a little bit about that, what you're doing, and maybe how people could reap the benefits from what you're doing through your organization.
Well, I'm really excited about that, because I've been in the field I've been doing this for about 17, 18 years. And one thing and I've facilitated evidence curriculums, presentations, doing all of that. But I think the biggest issue that we all have, and going back to what you were saying about mental health, The biggest issue that we all have is esteem issues. And a lot of things affect our esteem. And so what I wanted to do is to let's have a platform for young people to talk about it. Let's
Sure.
have a platform for young people to feel a support around them and be able to say, hey, I'm not the only person. And again, I go back to that isolation, especially when we're dealing with adolescents, they don't know how to express themselves. So with my business, I Heard You Cry for Help. I've self-published 3 books. One of the books is called Why Am I So? And Why Am I So is directed to, or it comes from the perspective of a child that's, an adolescent that's dealing with certain things, but just don't know how to express those things. So I used the book, Why Am I So, and created a workbook that will help build self-esteem. And so those things are tied into each other. And I'm launching a self-esteem support group for girls ages 11 to 13, and that's going to start June 4th. And it's, I got the location is 67 County Road 67 in Calera. And we're going to be meeting 2 Saturdays out of June and 2 Saturdays out of July during the summer. And hopefully it's just to build upon it. And so being able to be a support for our young girls and be able to, for them to be able to express the things that they're going through in a safe environment and build a support team for them.
That's awesome. Well, Zina, that really is incredible. Thank you for everything you do. I hope that it makes a difference.
I appreciate it, Brandon.
People are encouraged tonight to know that there's resources
Yes.
right here, local to where we are. You don't have to go and search the webs to try to find something. Right here locally, there's so many great resources right here in Shelby County. And so, Zina, I'm thankful for you. Thank you for what you do. We're going to link all of those resources that Zina mentioned right here so that you can go back and find those. You can find some of her resources. You can get more information about what she's doing at Central Alabama Wellness and also through her personal organization as well. So thank all of you for tuning in for just a few moments tonight for this conversation during our mental health seminar series. We're going to have an incredible few topics through the rest of this week. I hope you'll join us each night. Zina, thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Brandon, for having me. I appreciate you.